One of the hardest things that I had to learn as a painter is how do you take a two-dimensional surface and make it look three-dimensional? How do you paint something that looks far away? How do you pull the eye through? How do you trick the eye into thinking something is far, far away? I mean, if you look at like this painting here, you've got something that looks up close, like the trees, and then you've got the distant trees and the distant mountains. Or if you look at this painting here, how is it that the painter has led the eye and pulled you back? And how do you have to treat things differently in the background to make things look different? Well, today we have an expert on that, and our guest today is Samuel EARP from New Zealand. Samuel, welcome to Art School Live. Tell me about what you're going to do. Tell me how you're going. What we're going to help me understand this.
Hey Eric, how's it going? Yeah, so what I'm going to do. So one of the things I notice is many artists, they struggle painting landforms in a way, or painting a landscape and getting those landforms to look like they're in the distance. So what I'm going to show you today is just a structured methodology that you can approach a painting, like when you're blocking in, so that you can create easily depth in your painting to make those landforms looking like they're in the distance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a mountain landscape, because I think mountains are a great way of creating those tiers of depth. So that's what I'm going to show you in this painting this morning.
All right. Well, I think what we need to do is just get right.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rose.
Right, our guest today is Samuel EARP in New Zealand, and he's going to be teaching us how to pull the eye through a landscape. Samuel will take it away.
Awesome. Okay, let me just turn my camera around here. Okay, and
tell us what you're painting on. What's your surface? And it looks like you've used a transparent red oxide.
So I've used. Let me just go over to my easel here. So what I'm using is a 8x10 linen panel. It's oil primed medium weave linen. I love painting on these. They're really awesome for not only studio work but for plein air painting as well. So I do a lot of plein air painting. So they're just really durable. Now what I've done here is I've sketched out the composition using burnt sienna, and I'm using a product called oleo gel as well. I'm trying to reduce using things like liquid in the studio just because it's a bit toxic. So I've just to save on time already. I've already sketched out the composition. Prior to doing that, let me just show you something, because this is something else that will help you to understand or help you with distance or painting things in the distance. I've started off by sketching out a compositional design. So these are quick thumbnail sketches. So you can see the first one here straight away. I'm like, that's not going to work. So I've decided to zoom in on the mountain. And then once I've got my idea, I've got my final sketch there. So this is what I'm going to be painting. I'll show you the reference photo as well. So I've just got that there on my iPad. This is from the Rees Valley in southern New Zealand. So I went painting here with a few artists. It was quite a few years ago.
That's one of my favorite places to paint.
Yeah. I was actually painting with John Crump, Richard Robinson, and Scott Hamill, and some Australian guys as well when we were down there. But as I say, I think if you're going to do a studio painting, it's always really important to design your composition in your sketchbook. And the cool thing about this as well is it helps you to understand tonal values, and tonal values is how light or dark your subject is. And this is something that I see many artists struggling with, including myself, until I had this explained to me properly. And I think it's more important than the color mixing. Of course, the color mixing is important as well, but that's something that artists struggle with a lot. And I think if you can understand that, it helps you to be able to better paint things that are in the distance. So one of the things you can do is you can take your reference photo and flick it to black and white, and you can clearly see where all the lights and darks are. So the general rule of thumb is we'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground. And then as landforms recede, the darks aren't as dark and the lights aren't as light. So here we've got some really dark values in these southern beech trees here. And then you can see as the shadows in these mountains and then these distant mountains are getting lighter. So our darkest darks there is nowhere near as dark as the darks in these trees. So that's something.
And yet from the, if you were to go up close, they'd look the same.
Yeah. So yeah, if you were to get closer to that mountain, those shadows would be getting darker. So
okay, let me just interrupt real quickly here, Samuel, because there's a lot of new people tuning in at the lab.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What we're teaching today is how to create distance in your painting. How does something look? How do we pull them through, make it look like it's far, far away? And there's a trick to it. You're going to get to see that trick today.
Yeah, absolutely. Another cool thing. This is an easy concept to remember, and I read this in John Carlson's book, his Guide to Landscape Painting, and he summarized. He simplified the landscape by splitting it into 4 main areas. So you had the arch of the sky, which is some of the lightest values. Then the ground planes, which are the grass, which is a little bit darker in value. Then the slanting planes of the mountains, which is getting darker still. And then the uprights or the trees are the darkest values in the landscape. And I think that's such an easy concept to remember. So what we want to do with our painting to make things easier is to paint the dark values and shadows first. And I think this makes it easier because it sets a kind of framework for the painting that then makes it easier to paint the areas in light afterwards. And this is especially a useful thing to do when you're plein air painting because the light is always moving, and especially in New Zealand, it can just suddenly cloud over. So if you've painted all the shadows first, all the darks, it makes it much easier to paint the areas in light. So that's what I'm going to do with this painting is I'm going to start by painting the darks first. So the darkest values are in these beech trees here. So I'm just going to start off with, just for the moment, I will be switching up the color a little bit, but I'm just going to think of my painting really in terms of value. And I'm going to paint my darkest darks, which are here. So I'm using a mix of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and a tiny bit of alizarin crimson. I'll probably just add a little bit of titanium white because it's not completely in the foreground. But these two colors especially, they serve the basis of my palette. So the cool thing, what I love about burnt sienna is it's actually a dark orange. So orange is opposite to blue on the color wheel. So when they're combined, they desaturate. So I'm just going to mark in where these main shadows are on these trees. Now I will be coming back to this in just a moment, but I just want to establish the values. I'll quickly explain my palette as well because it's relatively simple. I don't like using too many colors. I used to use a lot of colors, and I found that it was a little bit confusing. And what I'm really the other thing I want to achieve in my painting is color harmony. So that's where the colors look nice. So if it's hanging on a wall, a viewer will look at it and think, wow, that's a really nice painting. And they might not know why, but it's part of the reason is because of the color harmony that's in it. So it's where the colors are all working with each other. And the way you can do that is by using common colors throughout your painting. So by using fewer colors, you're more likely to be using those colors in your painting. So this helps to achieve color harmony. So I'll just go with my colors anyway. I've got titanium white, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow medium, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and phthalo green. And I believe you can paint any landscape with these colors. I'm pretty sure you can probably paint anything with these colors. But the next thing I'm doing now is I've added some titanium white to this existing mix. So you can see that now it's getting lighter. So I'm going to paint these shadows over here. So a little bit lighter. Let's just add a little bit more. And I'm using a number 5 flat brush. So when I block in a painting, I'm not worried about detail at all. I just want to get the main lights and darks in there and the colors. And I can worry about detail later on. But the reason I like using flat brushes is because you get this really nice, like painterly gestural marks with them. So that's why I really like using these brushes. So as I say, these are number 5 Bristol flat brushes. Let's just add a bit more alizarin crimson. So the alizarin crimson, you only need a small amount of it, but it just gives it a nice like violet tint. You want to be careful not to use too much alizarin crimson because it can overpower your mixture otherwise, and it can look a bit. If you use too much of it, it looks a bit garish. So you've got to be careful. But it just does a nice tinting color. Now, one thing in New Zealand is, especially in summer as well, is when you look at the distant mountains, they often have this really quite strong blue cast to them. So that's what I'm doing here. The shadows in these mountains, they look blue. So these are the colors I'm marking in here. And this combination of colors it's a really good mix for painting shadows. And even if you're not quite sure what those distant distant shadows are, it's a good like go-to color combination even if you're unsure, because it just looks good in paintings. So as I say, I'm just painting these shadows first of all. So you see here, there's my darkest shadows. This is a little bit darker. Now we're starting to get lighter. So now I'm going to work on the shadows here. Now this is furthest away here in the scene. So we're going to make the value lighter. So remember, value how light or dark your subject is. And one of the things you can do if you're unsure of the values in the scene that you're painting, and you can even do this when you're plein air painting, is take a photo of the scene or take your reference photo and switch it to black and white. And even if you're outside plein air painting, you can just take a photo with your smartphone and then just flick it over to black and white, and you'll be able to clearly see where all the lights and darks are. So now I'm painting the shadows in these distant mountains, and I'm making the value lighter because it's further away. So the darks are not as dark and the lights are not as light.
So do you know why that is? Why do they get bluer in the distance?
Actually, isn't it something? It's something to do with the atmosphere and there's like a sort of haze, there's like water vapor and
Right.
things like that, and it scatters
water particles. So
yeah,
it's water particles. So if to help people envision this, when I teach, what I say is imagine that with each mountain there's a layer of glass, and that you've sprayed water on that layer of glass. And so this layer of glass has water on it, and then the one behind it has water on it, and so on. And as it filters through, it takes the yellows out and makes things look blue.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. Actually, if anyone here has been to the Blue Mountains in Australia, the reason they look blue, the distant landforms there look blue, is because all the gum trees there that are growing in the valleys and on the sides of the hills and mountains, they produce this kind of like fine mist that comes from their leaves, and then when the light's scattered and refracted or whatever, it creates this blue haze over them. So I guess that would be for the same reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, beautiful place, that the Blue Mountains. I've also been plein air painting there as well. So
maybe I'll take another group to New Zealand again. I've taken twice. Maybe it's time for a third group.
Oh yeah, you should come over to New Zealand. Well, the Blue Mountains is actually in Australia, but yeah, you should.
Okay, well, we'll go to Australia instead.
But you should definitely come over to New Zealand again for sure. It's just a landscape painter's paradise, in my opinion.
I would live there if my kids weren't so far away.
Yeah, that's fair. I can totally understand that. All my family are in England, or England and the island of Guernsey, which is where I was originally born. But yeah, just New Zealand it's beautiful and just.
So do New
really
Zealanders go, "What's that accent you have?" Or do you blend?
Oh well, there's so many British people living there. It's they know. I mean, they know straight away I'm from England. I haven't really lost my accent actually. So anyway, I'm just painting some of these like exposed rocks that you get on the sides of mountains. I'm just painting those in as well. So not worried about detail at all. Just want to get those main areas of darks. So this just sets a framework. Could probably make that a bit darker actually. It makes it easier as well to adjust the values as well if you need to, if you've started off this way first of all. Like I used to paint where I'd just start from the sky and then just work down, but it's actually quite a hard way to paint, I think, because you can end up if you immediately started by painting your sky too dark and you've painted the clouds and the sky and the highlights and then you work down, then you might get to a point where you're just getting too dark and then you've run out of tonal range to go to. So I just think it's easier to paint the darks first. Let me just get a paper towel here. So the other thing I'm done in this painting, what I'm going to do is I normally like to just paint a few clouds. So you'll see that the scene, actually it does have one little cloud in it, but I'm just going to add a couple of clouds. So again, I'm using the same color combination and I've just used a lot more titanium white. So I'm just going to mark that at the top there. But I always think clouds add, they can really add a lot of mystique and drama to a painting. So I'm just going to paint those in. We'll just have that on the top there. We can add some highlight to it in a bit.
All right, our guest today is Samuel EARP from New Zealand, and we're learning about creating distance when you're painting, a very important concept.
Absolutely, actually, and what I'm going to do also is paint some of these snow shadows. So I'm just using a little bit more ultramarine blue. I've got to be careful it's not too saturated. So that's like the intensity of the color. So our colors in general are going to be less saturated as we go into the distance, and certainly things like yellows and greens, they can drop out quite quickly, especially in New Zealand. See, I've used a bit too much alizarin crimson there. It's very easy to use too much of it. But anyway, so I'm just going to mark in some of these snow shadows on the side of the mountain here. It's a little bit, or when I was sketching out this composition, I was finding it just a little bit tricky because the whole mountain, it's quite spread far across. I think the name of it's Mount Clark. I can't remember. I think that's the name of it, and it's quite recognizable. But what I've done, it's actually the case in the photo anyway, that this part of the snow here is in shadow. But I want the eye to be more drawn towards this area, which is going to be in light. So this snow shadow should help here. Let's get some more. Okay. So as I say, loose brushwork for the moment, not worried about detail. The detail can come later on. I'm trying to sort of loosen up my brushwork in general these days. I find that I'm really drawn to plein air painters because I love that a lot of them have this loose gestural brushwork. Yet the colours and values in the scene that they're painting, they're just totally spot on in my opinion. And whenever I'm scrolling through Instagram, it's always the plein air painters that jump out at me.
Well, there are more good plein air painters today than there ever have been.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think, and the cool thing is like more and more. I think more and more people are doing it now, and probably because of social media, people are seeing it on social media and just seeing that you know, you can get some really great results, but it's a really good way to improve your painting skills. Like I learned so much from plein air painting. I had a period of time in it's around 2016 2017 when I was living in Queenstown, and I just did a lot of plein air painting, and I had so many just of these aha light bulb moments out in the field painting. And I think it would have been more difficult for me to pick it up in the studio. So it's like it accelerated my painting skills. But I mean, it's even now, you know, I still do. I'd end up doing plein air paintings that just don't work, and I'm like, It's like last week I did a plein air painting, and I think it's one of the best ones I ever did. And then I did another one about 2 days later, and I didn't think it was that good at all.
Yeah, welcome to normality. You know, your averages are probably higher than most. I probably do 1 out of 5 that I'm happy with.
It's still I love it though. I mean, even just being outside. You know, I went out yesterday as well, outdoors plein air painting. As the weather's been really nice here because it's autumn at the moment here in New Zealand. Our seasons are in reverse, but the weather's just been really settled and still reasonably warm actually for this time of year as well. So anyway, oh, you know what? I missed one bit there. Just bear with me a second. Actually, you know what? I'll come back to that bit in a moment.
All right.
It's nothing really that we've got the main areas of lights and darks in here. So our darkest darks here in these trees, and then you can see the tiers of depth in the mountain. They're getting lighter as we go into the distance. And there's at the moment it's just a sort of general like framework. It's like the bones of the painting. There's scope to adjust the values if I need to, and you know, that might need to happen. But now the next thing I want to do is paint some of the areas in light. So we've got you know, some exposed rock faces here in these mountains. There's the snow. Obviously, I'll leave the snow tool a bit later on. But we want to paint those as in the distance, so we can't use saturated color here. It's really important to desaturate it, because if the color was too saturated, it's just going to jump forward in the painting, and you'll lose that you know, illusion of depth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start just painting some of these like exposed rock faces in the mountains, and I'm using, just for the moment, at least for the upper part, just pretty much the same colors that I was using for the shadows, but I'm using more titanium white, and the burnt sienna there's more dominant. I'm also just going to mix a bit of alizarin, probably still going to get a bit of ultramarine blue in there too. So let's just see what that looks like. It might be, well, we'll see. Now that's not too bad actually. I'll just make that a bit lighter. So you should be able to quickly see or not whether your areas in light are too dark or too light or too saturated. So I'm keeping the color mix like relatively simple as well. I guess I'm more of a sort of, you know, direct painter in a way, as in I try and actually keep my color mixes as simple as I can, just for that cleaner color. And I found my colors started looking cleaner when I started using less of them. So another thing as well is I paint on a just the normal white of the canvas, because you can also use that as well, the white of the canvas, to gauge the values in the painting. There's a lot of artists that tone the canvas like with a layer of burnt sienna, and there's nothing wrong with that. I still do that sometimes myself. In fact, I used to do that a lot. I don't do it as much now. They've both got their advantages and disadvantages, but I think if you're learning to paint, it's probably better to paint on a white surface, because I've noticed it with some artists that when they tone the canvas, the darks are coming out too dark. And I actually had the same problem with my own paintings as well, where my darks were just coming out way too dark, and then I'd have to go back and like readjust all the tonal values, and it was actually like, it was pretty annoying.
Our guest today is Samuel EARP. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Samuel.
Oh, that's all right.
Teaching us how to paint distance by using mountains as an example. Welcome. If you're new here, we're here every weekday at 12 noon. If you have questions, put them into the chat.
Cool. So that's some of the main areas of the exposed rock faces in these mountains. So normally what I'm doing right now is I'm just getting the lights and darks in the colors, and then towards the end of the blocking stage, I'll then go back and restate the darks, and that's when I'll tidy up areas and just get it ready so that when it's dry, I can start adding some detail to it. And if you've started off you're painting loose like you have like here, you've got the option. You can either go as loose or as detailed as you like, but if you've got that loose underpainting, I think it just makes your painting look more painterly and more alive. That's why I like to do that. So the next thing I'm going to do now is paint the areas in light in this lower part of the mountain, and there's some trees and vegetation growing on there, and there's really not much. Like, it looks green, but it's very, very low chroma as well. So that green is really dropped out. So we don't want to be using like really high chroma colors here. So I'm just going to start with some yellow ochre and ultramarine blue. And I'm going to use a bit of alizarin crimson. I can use some of that there actually. Actually, I'll just get a bit of this. Oh, way too much. So easy to use too much alizarin crimson. It's such a powerful color.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do that, and we'll mix in some titanium white. So there's a bit of an art to this. It might take a little bit of practice, but on your palette, it can look quite like a, you know, warm greenish gray. But then when you get it next to the actual shadow areas, it has the appearance of green. Could probably do with just being a little bit lighter. And it's really only like tiny adjustments sometimes to the color mixture. So what the alizarin crimson does as well is it helps to desaturate the green. That's probably still a bit too dark. So the red in the alizarin crimson opposite to green on the color wheel. So alizarin crimson is actually a violet, and you can see that when you mix it with white paint. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. But you know, when combined with the ultramarine blue, you're still getting violet, and that's opposite to yellow on the color wheel. So it's a good way of desaturating a yellow. So say like if you're painting beach sand or something like that, and you just wanted to take some of the saturation out of it, you could use that color. Let's just add a bit more yellow ochre to it. As I say, it's a real balancing act with trying to get those distant colours there. Sometimes the thing is also good to just get some colour down, and then you can always go back and adjust it afterwards if you
Absolutely.
need to. Yeah, just get some colour down on there.
You got to do test shots.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I think it's still a little bit too dark there. Let's try that. I'm really just like marking in. It's like blocks of color. And actually, there's a bit more. I can see some more like yellow tones further up in the mountain, so we can add some of those in just to warm it up a bit.
If you guys have questions, put them in the comments. Our guest today is
Yeah, feel free to
EARP.
ask me questions.
So would you reiterate what you're painting with? Somebody asked if you were painting with oil.
Yes, I'm painting with oils. Yeah. So I just think oils are actually the easiest to paint with. I know a lot of people think acrylics are easiest, but oils I think are the easiest because you've got all the time in the world in terms of color mixing. You're not racing against the clock, whilst it's drying, and also the colors are so much more vibrant. So if you're going to paint with oils as well, even if you've never painted in your life, always use an artist quality oil. Your painting experience will just be so much better. And also the oil paints, they have so much more pigment density in them than
It'll last.
student oil.
The tube will last longer in theory, unless you're a big, thick.
Yeah, exactly.
Painter.
And in fact, it is true, like some of those colors are a bit more expensive, like your cadmium colors, but I find that these last like a really long time. Like the phthalo green I've used here, I mean, I've had that tube, and the alizarin crimson, I've had that same 40mm tube, I think, for about 2 or 3 years, and I still haven't used it all up. And I do a lot of painting, so.
Yeah, I have one tube of cerulean blue. I use it so rarely. I probably have had that for 20 years.
Yeah, but always use an artist quality oil. Never ever use student quality paints. I mean, I think it's worth investing in quality art materials. And I think the other thing as well is it's also like a mindset thing as well. It's like it makes you feel like you're a professional artist, if you see what I mean, if you're using good quality materials.
Well, you're going to battle things. It's going to be a lot harder if you're using crummy paints.
Absolutely, yeah. So you want to give yourself a good start there. So just some of these like lines here. I'm going to come back and when I come to restate the dark values, I'll tidy up some of these areas and stuff. So at the moment, I'm just getting color down. So this whole painting is about the mountains, and I don't know if anyone's ever read Edgar Payne's book called Composition of Outdoor Painting, but it's just as applicable to studio work, and he really goes into a lot of detail covering, as the book title suggests, about composition. And it's a really important thing to do in your paintings. So this is an S composition. So we've got a river, so it's kind of forming an S shape, and then this is going to be the main area of interest. But another thing you can do with mountain landscapes is if you have the summit of the mountain pretty high in the painting, it communicates great height and drama as well. So we still want to make sure we're leaving plenty of space for the sky. Like you don't want your mountain going off and touching the top and then coming back down. The same with we don't want equal height to the mountain. So you see this one is a little bit higher than this one, which is actually what it looks like in real life anyway. But we've got scope as well to move things around in the landscape. So you don't want to be copying direct from a photo. You can use the photo as a guide, but you're the artist, so you've got the freedom to move things around. So you want to create a painting and a composition, and you don't want to be getting copying the photo exactly, because that's where a lot of artists also can run into trouble with their paintings. And when I got mentoring with my own art years ago, and when he said to me, you can like change the painting around, move things around. You don't have to copy the photo. exactly. And I was like, really? And it was really like liberating. I think that's the cool thing about just landscape painting and especially plein air painting. We've got the freedom that we can move things around and change things. Create our little world in a way, as the great Bob Ross would say. So that's something I would strongly recommend as well, which is why I think sketching is so important as well, because if we can design a solid composition and we can start seeing the way ahead with our paintings, you're just making life easier for yourself in general. So yeah. So what I'm going to do next now, as I say, I'm going to be coming back to this and just tidying up some of these areas. I just wanted to get some of the, the main, at the moment it just looks like, it almost kind of looks like weird patterns. But next I'm going to paint the grass. So we've got a lot of this, mountain grass in New Zealand. So I could probably actually use the same color mix here or use something similar. And I'm going to use some yellow ochre. We'll use a bit of alizarin, probably use some of this here. And even some of that ultramarine blue can go in there. We'll just see what that looks like. Probably when I mix some green for the grass in the foreground, the trees, I can mix in a little bit of that as well later. But just to start with, we'll just use this. So again, I'm still using like relatively low chroma colors here. You know what, I reckon we could probably make that a little bit more yellow actually. The grass, some of the lightest values in the landscape. So often a light to mid tone, and you can see that when you switch your photo to black and white.
Are you using really thin layers of paint?
Yeah, just to start with, I'm not going too thick because I mean, even when we finished up here, when it's dry, I'll start adding more detail, and then I'll be using thicker layers. But I think about the fat over lean principle, so that's why I'm just starting off with thinner layers of paint. Yeah, I normally, add my thickest layers of paint towards the end of the painting. If I'm doing a plein air painting, I'll probably start off with the layers a bit thinner and then just go over them later on in the painting. Because normally when I paint outdoors, I use Liquin Original, Winsor & Newton Liquin Original. So I do take advantage of the fact that quite often your paint can start to dry a little bit when you're outdoors. I don't know if you ever use Liquin at all, Eric, when you paint, but outdoors. But yeah, it can start. I've noticed it can start even within an hour. Like the paint can even form a little bit of a tack on it. Makes it a little bit drier that you can layer some fresh paint over the top.
What is the size of this painting? Comes from a question from Laura.
Oh, this is an 8x10. Yeah, so pretty small painting. I like doing small paintings anyway, just because I do a lot of plein air painting, but also I could use this as a study for a larger painting, and I might do that. If this painting turns out well, I might do a larger painting, and I'll be able to use this small painting as reference, and then that way I can see the road ahead with my painting. So yeah, that's always a good way to do it. So yeah, start off with thumbnail sketches, then a final sketch to design your composition, and then we can do a small one like this, and then you can do a larger painting. So we'll paint the trees next. So I'm going to mix more of a saturated green. The green's quite dark and it's not overly saturated. So this is a native tree in New Zealand. It's one of the like southern beech trees. I think it's some kind of like mountain beech. So similar to the European beech tree. In fact, I think it used to be in the same plant family, but they reclassified it. So beech and oak are in the same family, but the southern beech trees that you get here in New Zealand used to be in the same plant family, but then they now seem to have put it in a family of its own. But they're beautiful trees anyway. They're evergreen as well. But we just want to mix up just a dark tone here. Oops, we used way too much alizarin again.
Happens.
Too
It's
much
very
alizarin.
powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. It's 4:30 in the morning here, man.
Oh, it is. That's right. Thank you very much for doing that. You got
Oh,
up
no,
for us? Wow, you are
Yeah,
my hero.
yeah, it's Thursday morning here in New Zealand.
Wow.
Okay, let's see what that looks
Everybody
like.
give him an extra bit of love in the comments.
Nah, it's all good.
Well, that's very kind of you to do that. I didn't even
Oh, no worries.
lost my mind.
Oh, no, that's all good. No, I love doing this. So here we go. So we're just getting some. I'm thinking of the. I'm just thinking of the trees as masses at the moment. So again, not worried about detail, and I'm actually going to come back and adjust that shadow. In fact, I'll do that in just a moment. Just to start with, I just wanted to see, get it down just so I knew where the darks are in the scene. In fact, actually, what I'll do. So this is a good mix for tree shadows. I'll just get a fresh brush here, but just ultramarine blue and a little bit of yellow ochre, and you'll get a nice, a dark tone, but you've taken the saturation of the blue out of it, and it's got like a green undertone. So we can start putting that in there, and then actually even there's already blue in there from that initial layer of paint that I put down. And then there's also a bit of burnt sienna and alizarin. So we've got some red in there. So that's going to help to desaturate the green, and it's a complementary opposite. So it's just going to make the green look more balanced and harmonious. So we could even, there's a few like grass shadows in here. So we could even just start just marking in the suggestion of that. I put a little tree down here as well.
A happy little tree.
Happy little tree. That should do it. And I'll start painting the grass in the foreground. So we can work off this existing mix here. I'm going to increase the saturation by using my cadmium yellow. So this is a color that I'm more used for things in the foreground because it's a quite high chroma color. The value of the color is quite light, and you can see that if you were to take a photo of your paint palette and switch it to black and white. So it's also going to lighten the color at the same time. Then adding a bit of titanium white in there is also going to lighten it further. And I'm just going to add the tiniest amount of phthalo green as well. So what that does is it just shifts the color, and it creates some of these emerald tones that you see in grass, grass green. Just like the alizarin crimson, you've got to be really careful you don't use too much of it because it's a very strong color. But let's just see what that looks like. That looks all right. I think we could lighten that a bit more. Let's just lighten that a little bit more.
I'm just going to tell everybody what's going on in case you just tuned in. This is Art School Live. I'm Eric Rhodes, and our guest today is Samuel EARP. He's up in the middle of the night in New Zealand, early in the morning on Thursday, and he is teaching us how to create distance in a landscape painting.
So just marking in the grass here. So some of the grass here in the foreground looks a bit pale because we've got some mountain grass as well, and some of it's straw coloured. So we can mark that in just a moment, but I'll just mark that in just like that. And then next, I'll just work off the edge of the paint mix here, and we can just start adding in some of these lighter straw colored tones in there. A little bit of oleo gel. So I'm using this oleo gel here. It's non-toxic. So it's just because I'm just trying to cut down on the sort of toxic mediums I've been using in the studio. We'll just paint that there, and we can add some of that mix into the grass. So a lot of the time you can just work off the existing paint mixes you've already made, and it helps with the color harmony. So that's your painting looking harmonious and having harmonious looking color in there. And we can do that by using common colors throughout the painting. So for example, the ultramarine blue, I've used it in the snow, I've used it in the shadows, I've used it in these areas in light, I've used it in the trees as well. So it's tying all the zones together in the painting. I'm even just going to add a little bit of green to this edge of the riverbank. We can just paint that in.
Hope you guys are finding this fascinating. Give him a pat on the back if you do. You'll love the comments or likes.
I'm just going to paint some of these. There's these little kind of bushes and shrubs that are growing on the side of the hill as well. So we'll just paint that in. The other thing is as well that I don't mix my colors together thoroughly. I like that broken color to come through. So it just makes it look a bit more painterly. But we can just add a few more of these, bushes and shrubs that are growing on the side of the hill. There we go. I mean, I'll be coming back to this anyway at the end of the painting when I restate the dark values. So let me just work on this grass a little bit more. See what that looks like. That looks pretty good. Okay, we're getting there.
Getting there.
Getting there. We'll just add that. Let me tidy that up a bit more.
I want to see what happens when you lay in that river.
Yes, absolutely.
We're not going to have a whole lot more time. We're going to about 5 more minutes.
Oh, okay. In that case,
and would you explain also? Somebody is asking you to explain what you mean by broken color.
So what it is the color's not mixed together thoroughly, and it just, you can see like some of the individual hues from the paint coming through. Right, I'm going to paint this super quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to chuck in a few cloud highlights here. So that's a mix of titanium white with burnt sienna. So the burnt sienna just warms it up, gives it a bit of an orange glow. And for the I'll quickly do the mountain snow as well. So the mountain snow, I'm going to use the same color, but I'm just going to mix in a bit of this shadow mix, and that's going to keep it a bit darker. And the reason I want it a bit darker at this stage is once it's dry, I can then add some lighter layers of paint, and then I'll save the lightest values right at the end, and that will be the snow highlight. So I'll be using like literally titanium white and a bit of yellow ochre, and it will really bring your mountains to life. So we want to kind of hold off on the on our values. We don't want to go too light too early, because otherwise we'll exhaust our whole kind of tonal range, and then we won't have anywhere to go. But
and you just do it. Do you have time to do a quick example of what you might do, or do you have to wait till it's dry?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you need to wait till it's dry, really. But you're keeping everything a little bit darker, so you've got plenty of room to add lighter layers of paint afterwards. But I'll just paint the sky next. So really simple, ultramarine blue, titanium white, and just a dash of phthalo green, just a little bit. That's just going to add that green element to the sky. So I'm just aware that we're running out of time, so I'm trying to paint this as quickly as I can.
If you guys are new here, we're here every weekday at 12 noon.
Okay, let's just get a bit more phthalo in there. So just marking in some of that sky there. How are we doing for time, Eric?
You're okay. You got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, cool.
And you guys don't go away because I've got some stuff to show you at the end.
Okay.
Notice where he's holding his brush. He's not holding it up close.
No, I prefer to sort of hold it at the end of the handle. It's like you get more kind of like leverage with it, and again, I think it just makes your paintings look more painterly. So the other thing I do when I'm painting sky is I like to add a little bit of texture in there, just with some vertical downwards brush marks, make the sky a little bit lighter. Now for the river, the river's reflecting the sky quite a lot, and then there's also, minerals and stuff from the mountains that makes it look quite blue. So I can use my sky mix essentially. So I've got ultramarine blue, bit more phthalo green. The valley of the river is a little bit darker than the sky. It could probably even mix in a little bit of yellow ochre there as well. And let's just see what that looks like. Oops.
Pretty color.
Yeah. Wait, you can get some like really vibrant looking blues in New Zealand. And actually this color combination, if you paint seascapes, you can use these exact same colors for painting the sea as well. They're obviously in different amounts. You'd probably want more ultramarine blue in your mix. But yeah, again, I just like to keep it simple. Whoops, I've used too much yellow ochre there. Hang on. So just to recap, I think it's good to have to work to a set methodology to your paintings, and I think it gives you more predictable results. So this is why I prefer to paint the darks first, and then it just makes it much easier to paint the areas in light. Now then, I'm just getting some color down first of all, and then I can add some lighter tones in there in just a moment. Really, at this stage of the painting, it's all about it's getting those darks established first, and then getting the color down. And then when you're getting towards the end of the blocking in stage, then that's when you can just tidy up areas. You can go back, just restate those dark values, just tidy up the areas, so all the canvas is covered. Actually, one thing I was going to do whilst we're here is just paint the edges of those riverbanks as well. So that's going to be pretty dark around there. And there's some there's some, what do you call it? Like the bank of the river, there's some kind of like sandy, salty looking stuff.
Yep.
Oops, just adding a few little shadows to some of this grass. It's almost like this painting. It's serving as a map to work to. So once it's dry, I've got like a solid foundation, and I'm gonna be able to start adding the details to it. But I'll just carry on I'll just carry on back with this painting the snow on this mountain. And actually, it doesn't matter that the burnt sienna from the underpainting is mixing in a bit either, because it just helps to warm up the snow. And as I say, I want the snow darker at this stage. As I say, I think painting mountains, if you want to learn about creating distance in a painting, then mountains are a really great subject to paint, because you can often clearly see where all the lights and darks are in them, and you get those tiers of depth. So they can look really effective in paintings.
Question, are you going to leave any of the burnt sienna showing? Ask Candy.
No, I won't. No, not for this. That is an effect that you can do in paintings, and I already talked about this earlier, how some artists like to tone their canvas, and I used to do that, but I stopped doing it because I found my darks were often coming out too dark. And actually, years ago, I bought a couple of videos from the artist Scott Christensen. He's one of my favorite modern day painters, and he said that he used to do the same thing himself with his paintings, and he said he would get lost in his darks. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly how I described it.
Yeah, we have his videos at painttube.tv. Okay,
Cool.
It's time to put the brush down and come back
Awesome.
on camera so everybody can see what a good looking guy you really are.
Yeah, sure. Let me just turn my computer around there.
I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I think it's really, really fun. Learning to do distance is so important, and it's something you should all try. That is your homework, your assignment. All right. Everybody needs to try that. Okay. Now Samuel is back. Samuel, see what a good looking guy he is? They grow him good looking in England. Samuel, thank you so much for being on today. We put all of Samuel's contact information, Instagram, etc., into the chat so you guys can find it. Samuel, a big hit. We'll have you on again. Thank you for doing this today. You guys hang around for a minute. All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye. Creating distance with Samuel EARP. We have really good lesson for today. We're here every weekday at 12 noon. I'm Eric Rhodes, and this is Art School Live. We started this with COVID. Our goal is to help everybody learn to paint, even if you don't feel like you know how or can. We believe you can, because it's learning a process. And we believe if you watch just five of these shows, you'll get the courage and inspiration to take it up and to try it, and stop telling yourself you can't do it. You can do it. Okay, well, I'll tell you about something new. First off, I just released a new podcast, my Plein Air podcast with Joe Paquette. And Joe Paquette is a superstar, and I've done 2 or 3 podcasts with him in the past. They're all different. He is so thoughtful. He's so intelligent, lots to say. So make sure to go to Plein Air Podcast for that, or wherever you get your podcast. We have an audio and a video version of that, and you can look it up. Also, my event, Paint the Adirondacks, is coming up. It's an artist retreat. We only have about, last I checked, 14 seats left. And it is a retreat, a week of painting. You roll out of bed and you paint. We feed you, we put you up. We tell you where to go paint. You can go paint on your own if you want, but we sit up at night, we sing, we dance, we party, we play guitar. It's like a camp for adults, and that is coming up, but there's only 14 seats left. That's in June in the Adirondack Mountains, so upstate New York. We also have Fall Color Week, and there's only 19 seats left to that, and that is coming up in Carmel and Monterey this fall. We're going to be staying right on the ocean, and so we're going to have a lot of fun painting there together. Same type of deal, retreat, and again, not very many seats left for that. All right, you guys, enough about this stuff. Thank you for tuning in. We do have a free gift for you today. We have 97 tips. This is a free video. 97 incredible art secrets. Just go to 97artsecrets.com/free and you can get this. It's a video. You can download it immediately. It's a professionally produced full length video. And if you want a DVD, you can pay the shipping and get that. It's like $5 or something. It's a pretty extensive video and worth a couple $100. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm Eric Rhodes, and we love you guys. We love the fact that we're one big happy family. I was watching the chat. I saw people from Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Holland, France, Italy, Japan. Let's see, what else do I remember? Anyway, all over the world. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're one big happy family. The whole idea here is to bring you together and learn to paint and just have fun together and meet each other. We hope you'll come back for another one. And if you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, that would be cool. But you can find hundreds of these that we've done, and you can learn to paint this way. Now, if you want to go further and get into a lot of detail and, really professionally produced stuff, we've got that for you too, but that's for another time. Hey, thanks for being here today. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Plein Air Magazine and fine art connoisseur. See ya.